Hello, hello, Boundless Love family. It's great to be here with you in episode 11. I am so excited to have a guest here who we are going to talk marriage, folks. This is the conversation for Cafecito for Two. One of the most powerful things that I think we can feature in our work together here, having written Boundless Love together and meeting all kinds of folks who are supporting marriages out there, is the journey that leads us there. And so today we have Bill, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I should have checked
Carmody.
this with you
I'll just
before
help
we
you
went.
out.
Oh, Carmody. It's kind of perfect. Bill Carmody, who is not only is an author, but he's a coach and he's an entrepreneur and he has a whole list of talents. So I would just like to warmly welcome him to our show
Thanks,
today.
Christina.
Nice to have
I'm
you,
so
Bill.
glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
Of course.
Did you want me to start with a little bit of my background and how we got to be? Great.
Absolutely. I'd love to just hear if you could share with our audience a little bit of your road to where you're at. And I know that you have a huge resource around the 3 rules of marriage. And so let's just go and get there together.
We'll start there, right? Let's just say that.
Yeah, there you go.
Right off the bat. So yeah, in 2020, my wife and I celebrated our 20th year of marriage together. And so we're 20 years married, but and when we did that, we celebrated it through writing the book, The 3 Rules of Marriage. And what's really, really powerful is that both my wife and I are coaches, and we didn't start off as coaches. I began my entire journey building and exiting 2 multi-million-dollar marketing agencies. And I discovered at that time that I loved people a lot more than I loved brands and companies. Like that, there was a soullessness to it that I wasn't into it. And after I exited my second company, I became a professional certified coach with the ICF. And as part of that, I started coaching executives who I really have a passion for. And what I saw consistently was that, whatever was happening on the home front showed up on the work front. And I was blessed with having this absolutely blissful marriage. And I came from parents that were divorced. So like my marriage, paradigm was very different growing up as a kid than what I ended up writing about in the book. So the ability to create a blissful marriage actually came from my wife's side of the family, whose her parents got married. When I met my wife, their parents were already 45 years married, and they were acting like newlyweds, like patting each other on the butt, newlyweds, 45 years into the marriage, right?
Who does that?
That was my question. Who does that?
Yeah,
that's not normal. And of course, I, coming from divorced parents' background, is like I saw their model of this is what I want for myself. This is what I want for Elena, my wife. And ultimately, this is what I want to demonstrate for my kids, because at the time, even before we got married, I knew that I wanted to have kids. And so it's like, this is exactly what I'm looking for.
Sure.
So after I asked my father-in-law's permission to ask his daughter's hand in marriage, we were super excited. He said, I asked him afterwards, I said, so how do you do it? How is it that you and Connie, his wife, have been just so blissfully married for over 45 years? I don't understand. Like, I've just never seen anything like this before. He goes, well, we have these 3 rules. And I said, stop, let me get a pen. I got to write this down.
Oh my gosh. Wow, he was on it. He was direct. He had it in his finger. I'm so impressed.
And that was it. It was like it was such a simplistic thing. And I'll share with these rules today. But I think the most simplistic thing for this is that something so simple can be so profound. And what was really great about it is when you have all these complicated if-then statements and all this challenging stuff, it can really stop you from being fully present and active in your marriage. And I didn't want something that was going to be like this laundry list of all the do's and don'ts. It was like, no, it's really, really simple, right? So you'll hear, even when I say these with you, like you'll immediately go, yep. It's like there's no rocket science here, but it's the practice that makes it important. It's not the knowing of.
Well, and the consistent practice, right? And the implementation. I know so much of what I realize in marriages, it's like about frequency and intensity of the positive versus, right? Like, it doesn't mean there isn't negative. It's just that you don't live there. Like that's not it challenges come up, but what you're putting forward, it's all about that consistency. And like I'm sure you're saying in your in-laws to have such a positive role model from the get, that's so huge. Because a lot of us, especially now, because I think marriage is less and less held up, right? It's not necessarily as visible or esteemed in some ways, or certainly more complicated, right? I think that's such a powerful gift to show you that and to share that.
And what I discovered also is that these simple rules that work for marriage work for life. It's for any relationship you want to make better. It worked for my own business in terms of my colleagues and my employees. So what you find is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so once you start to see your own patterns, you can really start to make shifts, and those shifts can be profound for any relationship you want to be in. And of course, this is your primary relationship. So it's probably the most important relationship. And yet it's like all the other relationships still impact you. So if you can do this really well with your spouse, you can do it with any relationship that you really want to take on.
Yeah. Nice. All right, I'm ready. I'm like, Bill, you got me all stoked. I'm like, okay, let's go to the first step.
So this is my favorite. It's the simplest one, and it's the one that has really just can tear marriages apart if it's not followed. So here it is. Don't keep score. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many. It's so profound and so easy. This one I immediately got. When he said it, I'm like, oh, I love this. But here's the thing. It's like when you're in a relationship, first of all, generally speaking, women are smarter than men. And so they remember things a lot more.
I didn't say that, y'all. I did not say that.
I am saying, generally speaking, it's like, we all have our specialties. But men tend to like do something and then forget all about it. Like it's like do it and then get off it. They do it and get off it. And it's really at a DNA level, women they need to remember more things more often. And so it's very easy to remember like how things were. So first and foremost, it leveled the playing field for my father-in-law. It was like by having a note, don't keep score. What it really did is it allowed us to really focus on the present moment. And it was sort of leveling, like if we're in an argument, it's about the here and the now and the thing we want to change or make better in our relationship, not all the things you did laundry list wise, going back to the beginning when we first started dating. Because how many people do you know do that? They're constantly anchoring their marriage in the past. They're constantly anchoring their relationships in the past.
And sticking it there, getting it stuck there, right? That's what I'm hearing.
And what happens is we shove stuff into the proverbial marriage closet, and we keep shoving it in, and we keep shoving it in, we keep shoving it in, and one day we open it up, and everything comes flooding down, right? And so it's like we're not having an argument about the fact that you didn't take out the trash. We're having an argument about everything you ever did wrong in the relationship that is manifesting and not taking out the trash this week, right?
Right. Right. We're getting it all done.
It's right? You have these conversations like, I don't even know what to say. Because are we talking about the trash? Or are we talking about how I'm just a generally bad person? Because that's what I'm hearing. All the things I've done wrong.
It can get generalized very quickly. One thing I just love about this one in terms of not keeping score is it is antithetical and countercultural because we have such a competitive culture. Like it is like, I think for a lot of us, I mean, I'm a competitive person by nature. So like I have to dial this down. And even in jest, like in fun with my husband, we compete with each other. You know what I mean? Like it actually like encourages us to like go, farther. But obviously there's this kind of shadow side or the detrimental side where it's like, we are a team. Like there's a we and us unit here and we're for each other, not against each other. And I just really quickly have to say, I've seen friends, our kids are, we have a 14 and 11-year-old, and earlier when our kids were younger and our peers, I had a friend who literally would calculate like all the hours of childcare and rearing and make sure that her husband did the exact same amount. Clearly. And like, but they're no longer together. So there you go.
Predictable.
Case in point.
Because here's the other side of it too. It's like, what's more important to you? Having the relationship of your dreams or being right?
Right.
Because you think if you're keeping score, it's righteousness. Like I am right and you are wrong. And let me tell you all the evidence that I have that you're wrong and I'm right. That's not a relationship. Like we're not going in front of a court to try to prove who's the better spouse. Like if that's what you're about, you've lost the love. You've lost the relationship. It's not there. It's an accounting of the relationship, an actual feeling or experience of the relationship. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love it. So don't take score. There is
no keeping score. No, don't keep score. Right. So now the second one was a little less obvious to me, right? The second rule is it's more important to say I appreciate you than I love you. Now, for me, that one caught me. And I said to my father-in-law, I said, that one doesn't make sense to me, because to me, love is the more important than appreciation. And he said, but here's the thing, love is general and appreciation is specific. So when I say I love you, I can still not like you very much.
Right.
I can mean it. I love you. And right now I'm really pissed off at you. Right. So it's like, I can mean that. Right. I love you loudly. Right. See, the thing about it is appreciation is specific. When I say I appreciate you taking the dishes and putting them away, I appreciate that you did the laundry, I appreciate that you thought about what we wanted to do this weekend and you took initiative and you got dinner reservations, and I appreciate that you took the kids out of school when I would normally have to do that for myself, whatever it was. When you say I appreciate you, you're basically acknowledging them for the person they are, not for the person you want them to be.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think that makes a lot more sense, because so often in marriage we can feel, and I think this is human nature in any relationship, to feel like we go invisible, or, you know, that our actions are not noticed and taken for granted, and potentially that is really unsettling, right? And isolating. It's like, am I seen in my marriage? Am I seen in my family? And so I think when you're right, I think that's so huge, because when you do feel appreciated, it's almost like your energy is endless, right? Like you feel so pumped and acknowledged that your heart is full, that you can continue to give. But if you don't feel appreciated, you just shut down.
Well, and the thing is, I can be in a relationship and say I love you and mean it, but you don't necessarily feel it. Because I can say that I love you, but if you're not feeling it from me, it's like, are those just words? Are you saying that because you're expected to say it? Like, there's all this other sort of like back channel communication that's behind the scenes. But it's hard when you say you appreciate someone for something specific. Like, I appreciate you made the bed this morning. Like, it lands. It's like, I see you. You made effort in our relationship, and I'm acknowledging the effort you made. Thank you for making our marriage better. Like, all of that's contained within that I appreciate you for. And it's very specific, and it makes me feel good, because it's like, okay, you recognize me. Now, when my wife does my dishes, she doesn't have to do that. She knows that I will eventually get to them, but sometimes I'm running late for a meeting. Right. So I'll put them in the sink, and I know that it's my dishes. I'm going to do them. When I come back and they're in the dish rack, I say, look, I really appreciate you doing that. You didn't have to. And she goes, she knows, I know you didn't have to, but I wanted to. I saw that you were busy. I saw that you were in a meeting, and this is how I could contribute too. It was great. So we have this beautiful way where we can appreciate each other, and we know we're not keeping score, right? So it's just in the moment, right? It's just here it is. Right. Thank you so much, and then we're good.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a biggie. It's a biggie. I think, like you said, to be honest, but that's something that in all relationships, if we did more of, it's huge.
Exactly. So the last one, and it's so simple, but it really is, it changed everything for me, which the last one is never go to bed angry. And if you adopt that one, and this is a Phyllis Diller one that was adopted by Phyllis Diller, never go to bed angry, stay up and fight. That was like the joke. But the thing about it is that you actually do have to make a decision, because if you see rule number 1, don't keep score, then by the end of the day, you have to make a decision. Is the thing I'm upset about important enough to resolve this evening so we can start fresh tomorrow morning, or do I let it go?
Right.
Because if I can't keep score.
Yeah, I think it's a path to forgiveness, bottom line. Like, I always read and heard, for me, the subtext of that, don't go to bed angry, is that you have to have a willingness to forgive. You may not be 120%, like you may not be there, arrived at forgiveness, but that you're willing to, like you said, surrender, let it go. Because the more you hold on, I mean, that to me, I don't know, I just feel like it's a futile battle. Like, why stress yourself out and hold on to it that much? Like, it just seems, it's almost like self-destructive.
And you use the word forgiveness, and that literal definition is to give forth the past. So what I'm actually doing is I'm releasing that which has anchored me. So to forgive is to give forth the past, which is to mean that I'm going to acknowledge my living in the presence. So to forgive is to let go. Now, the thing is, I don't have to be okay with what you did to me. There's a wrong that happened there. And if I really want to change it in our relationship, I'm going to speak up and I'm going to tell you like, hey, I don't like how that went down, or I don't like what did there. This is how I felt. This is how you made me feel in this particular situation. This is the experience that I had, right? But the forgiveness is I'm going to let that go. But I also need you to know how it affected me so that we don't repeat that. And that's a different way of having it. But to forgive is not that I'm saying you're okay. I'm saying I'm going to let it go.
Right.
I'm going to let it go.
Right.
And that's the thing.
Right. You're not saying the behavior is acceptable, but yeah, you're not. I mean, this is the other flip side of forgiveness is when you do hold on to the past, you're rooting yourself. Right. You're getting yourself stuck.
Exactly.
Right?
So the alternative is I'm going to put you in jail, but I'm going to be the jailer. I'm going to make sure you never get out. So I'm going to sit there watching you in the jail cell every single day. You know, who's actually in jail at that point? Right. And so when we anchor ourselves into the past, we're really holding ourselves there as much as the other person. And we relive that wrong over and over and over and over again. And it's like, it'd be like, I'm poisoning our relationship because I want to be righteous about it.
Right.
It's not going to work out, right? It's just not going to be there. So to give forth the past means to let go. And so from that perspective, as we go into these 3 rules, if you see how they're set up, I'm not going to keep score, right? I'm committing to not keeping score. I'm going to say I appreciate you more often than I say I love you. And I'm never going to go to bed angry. And if I do that, that means I am constantly living in the present moment. And I'm always looking for how to make this present moment even better. Who doesn't want a relationship?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you're right. It is. It's like it's deceivingly simple in a way because it's certainly challenging to live out. Because I think so much of it, like you said, around being fully in the present, we have so many challenges, right, in terms of distractions and busyness and our own, insecurities or whatnot. And so, being able to really hang with all of these 3, I think, but at the same time, it's also really refreshing because it doesn't have to be that complicated.
No, but I think, one of the early poets, Goethe, used to say, to know a thing and not live a thing is not to know the thing. So I can sit here and listeners right now, I'm sure they're like, oh yeah, I get it. But here's my question. Are you living it? I mean, the thing is, those 3 rules take up a single sheet of paper. So why'd I write a book about them? You know what I mean? This is all about application. I am a 5th degree black belt. So 30 years of martial arts. And every single day, we still practice the basics. Low block, middle punch, simple. Why? Because it becomes so muscle memory based that if I were attacked, I wouldn't even think about it. It would just happen like in a reaction. And it's the same thing you want in your marriage is that you have to train yourself to really focus on what that appreciation is, to catch yourself keeping score and then letting it go, to see that you went to bed angry and you got up angry. And it's like, is that really the relationship you want? When you wake up in the morning, you're pissed off from something that happened yesterday. That's not how you want to live your life. So that becomes practice. It's like 3 simple rules, but when you actually follow them, they are profound in their impact.
Can I ask you, Bill, in your work with couples and individuals, what do you think the biggest obstacle for folks are in applying these? Because I think that's really interesting to note for people, so that because sometimes it's like, well, why am I not getting it? Or like, why am I getting hung up? Like, I feel so frustrated that I'm still struggling.
So this comes to the other part of what I was going to share with you tonight was about mental fitness training, right? So one of the things about this is how do you become mentally fit? So we are all sage and we are stopped from being the best version of ourselves by our saboteurs. And this is, I read this really, really beautiful book in 2012 from Shirzad Chamine called Positive Intelligence. And it's a New York Times bestselling book. But what he did is he looked at the neuroscience and positive psychology and all the latest and greatest research and insights. And he really put together he calls it factor analysis, where he took it like all the negativity that comes from our inside of us can be boiled down to 10 saboteurs. We all have our judge, right? Which is judgment of self, judgment of others, and judgment of situations. But then if it were just our judge and our sage, it would be an even match. And it would sort of be this little duality, but it would be very, very evenly matched. But the judge is the master saboteur, and they enroll one of 9 accomplished saboteurs. So I'll just speak for myself. I have a controller and a hyperachiever. So in my experience of this marriage, my hyperachiever wants to win. And so winning looks like I'm going to get better. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Right. I'm constantly. And so that hyperachiever gets in the way of the love that I want to have, because that's always sort of one-upmanship. Right. That's the hyperachiever. Or my other is the controller. I want to do it my way. And when I'm so focused on doing it my way, I'm going to railroad the other person in front of me because they're not following the pattern that I want to see in the relationship. So, and I can go through all 9, but the point is that every single saboteur shows up differently. The victim is going to act and behave very differently than the avoider, than the pleaser, than the hypervigilant, right? So each one has their own go-tos. So it'll look very different and nuanced. But in truth, the simplicity of it is you are your sage and your saboteurs get in the way. And when you see these rules are difficult to implement, it's because one of your saboteurs have shown up. And it's basically driving you restless. I want to, like, what's next? I want to get what's going on, you know? And so that sort of feeling that I have to constantly change things up because I'm bored, right? All of these accomplished saboteurs stop us from having the relationship of our dreams. So it's good and it's fine to know these 3 rules. They are simple and profound in their application. But then underneath those 3 rules is the understanding of how we show up either in our sage or in our saboteurs. A marriage in sage is blissful. It is absolutely love ever after kind of feeling experience. But a marriage in saboteurs is the righteousness, the right, wrong, you know, you did this to me, I did that to you, the keeping score, all that stuff that comes from saboteur judgment. Judging myself, I'm not good enough. Judging you, you're not good enough. Judging the situation, if only X, Y, and Z, then we could be happy, right? It's all a lie. Right. But we buy into those lies because it's how we protect ourselves. It's our limbic system. It's the ability to fight, flight, or freeze that comes from our saboteurs.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. That is like one of the most concise definitions or rundowns I've gotten from that. And I really appreciate it because so much of it is, that internal investigation, that curiosity that we can cultivate about our own, right, sort of areas, and also not to personalize it because it's part of the human condition. Like you said, like saboteurs are universal. Like we all have this, right? So it's not about necessarily a personal failure. It's around, like you said, how we're always geared to protect or have some kind of power struggle or whatnot, and being aware of it is really where you're going to be able to kind of, it seems like, circumvent the reaction.
So we're fighting our own evolution, right? Because our brains were not here to make us happy. They were here to make us safe, right? When the bushes rustled, our forefathers and foremothers, like they had to run because it could have been a tiger, right? But that same trigger, fight, flight, or freeze response is in us today. When I get an email from a boss that says, I need this report by Friday, like I get hijacked. My damn boss, right? And then I bring that hijacking back in the relationship. It's like, hi, honey, good to see you. Don't talk to me right now. You're still hijacked from that damn email 2 hours ago. It's natural.
Right.
Instead, we got to be able to clear it. Yeah. We got to get off it, and that's again, just how can we get back to our sage self so we can show up in that relationship? So to me, it's really important to transition. When I'm done with my workday, I breathe. I might do some tactile. I might do some, any type of version where I drop back into my body so that I can show up fully present to my spouse and my kids and not have to feel like I'm bringing all of my work stuff home with me, because that's not healthy to the relationship either.
Yeah. And so that you're fully available, right? You're fully available to those relationships, that you're fully present. And I think that's so key, is like those transition points are really where it's at in terms of being like, okay, I'm going to let go of this role or this task, this moment, and I'm going to move into a different space. I think this is so awesome. Now I'm going to be thinking about these 3 rules like for the rest of the week, if not longer, right? Around, because a lot of them too is not just about practicing. I mean, of course, like you said, they are, but they're also embodying them, like in terms of your energy, because I feel like when you're not keeping score, you're a totally different person. Do you know what I'm saying? than if you are.
It's like having a program on your computer that's running in the background, draining all your resources, right? You see these programs that constantly are like going and spinning and spinning and spinning. You're like, wow, I have like a fast computer. Why is it running so slow? It's because you have this open program that's just looping. And that's what's happening in our head. I can't believe she did this to me. I can't believe he did this to me. I can't believe how could they ever that keeping score is just looping. It's like Shakespeare, the coward dies 1,000 deaths, but the brave man dies but once. That comes from this idea that I die over and over in my head every time I envision exactly how this went down. And I'm fighting that argument from a month ago. It's still in my head and I'm still having it. And I should have said this and I should have said that. And this is how I would have won. I mean, really? Is that what you want? You want to win? I want a blissful marriage. I want to come home and feel really at peace with my spouse. I want my kids to see a model of a relationship that I love having and being in, and that they can aspire to when they have their relationships, right? That's what matters to me. And so that's what
do you feel? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry. Do you feel that by modeling a healthy relationship, do you see it in your kids already in terms of their expectations and how they relate to others?
I have my boys are a little older than your kids, but I have a about to be 18-year-old next month and a 15-year-old. And what's amazing is that, in their teenage formative years, I look at them in astonishment. And I mean this sincerely, because I know when I was 12 and 13, I was getting into all kinds of trouble, and part of it was because my parents were divorced and there wasn't a lot of oversight and I had a lot of opportunity, but the other side of it though, is that I really do, I see the friends they hang out with. I can tell you how your child is by who their friends are that they hang out with. When I see who they hang out with and I see that they're doing, my kids are just so, there's such a peaceful calm that it comes over them when they're working with their friends, and they're not trying to dominate the conversation. They're not trying to own it. They're really just being in the space of connection. And I think what's happened is that while they have gone into their different, high school experiences, they've really looked for people that are authentic, and they're really connecting with friends that are meaningful relationships that they're in. And I really do think that they're seeing how my wife and I have been together and the way that we show up, and they're thinking that's the kind of relationship that I want. And it's not overt. They're not saying, hey, Dad, your relationship.
Right. It's not like this is what I'm looking for.
It's intrinsic. It's this idea that, wow, I know that this is capable. I'm seeing it in my home front. So why would I settle for anything less? That's what I want.
Right.
For them not to settle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's just your set point, right? Like it's your baseline. Right. And so you operate from that. And I think that's so great, because we don't realize, I think, sometimes the power of modeling, not only for what we do for other people, but how that affects us. Because my husband and I have so many other couples that we aspire to be like or look up to, like you said, in terms of your in-laws. And I think that's really powerful, because sometimes, at least for me, I feel like that living, breathing example is huge in terms of just like making it real for me. Like, this is just where, and like you said, these simple everyday actions are where it's at. And that's the message I'm getting from you today. Like, this is where we can take our power back and really be present in a relationship and create these healthy openings for connection and intimacy that don't have to be super grandiose, but they are accessible to all of us.
Well said. Well said.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just want to share with everyone, we'll have your information, Bill. Bill has a whole kind of, a whole multiverse of talents and, his career in terms of coaching, etc. So we're going to give it to you all in the show notes. But I just wanted to specifically emphasize his book. And also for you all to know that he is right there, the 3 rules of marriage. I love it. Perfect. And he wrote it with his wife on their 20th anniversary, which I think is so cool. It's like, why not put that milestone, right? That marker in the sand. It's like, that's just so awesome. And thank you just so much for your time and your attention, your energy. I really appreciate it. You're very inspiring. And I know our audience will have a lot of fun following you and getting more
And
info
Christina,
from you. So thank you so much.
I know everything's going to be the show notes. The one thing I want to share is for anyone who goes to the three-rulesofmarriage.com, they can get the first 2 chapters for free, and it gives them the overview of everything we just shared. So anything they want to go deeper into, it's totally free. They can check it out on three-rulesofmarriage.com.
three-rulesofmarriage.com. Get the 2 first chapters for free, and you can dig in deeper. Yeah, that's even better than our little show notes. You'll get like more bang for buck in terms of your energy. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christina.
All right. Thank you